My son told me you're an alien.
Well, you don't have anything to worry about. I'm not an alien.
Ever since Resident Alien crashed onto the scene back in January of this year, fans of the franchise have been calling for its renewal, with the show reaching new heights as far as comedy dramas on the Sci-Fi Network are concerned. And with an incredible mixture of both practical and virtual effects, it's no wonder that the series has become so popular. But what would you see if you had a chance to peek behind the curtain before the practical is improved by the virtual? Well, whether you're a fan of the franchise or just want to know more about the effects used by the showrunner in bringing us this beloved series, stay right where you are as we're about to explore the behind-the-scenes secrets of Resident Alien. So strap yourselves in and get ready for a bumpy ride as things are about to get interesting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos that we post. The origin of Resident Alien. For those of you who don't know, before Resident Alien was a popular television show with a certified fresh rating of 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was a comic book series created by Peter Hogan and Steve Parkhouse. The series was published by Dark Horse Comics back in 2012, which to date has released approximately 4 miniseries issues under the same name. And like any television series with comic book origins, you can expect Resident Alien to need some serious special effects when it comes to bringing its source material to life. This is actually especially true when it comes to Resident Alien in particular, whose main character is a morphic alien that has crash landed on Earth after failing to destroy the planet as he was meant to. Shocking visual effects and a low budget would cause a show like this to crash and burn, regardless of how incredible and complex the storyline may be. As such, quite a bit of magic had to be worked whilst on the set of the show to ensure that the television franchise took off and brought the Sci-Fi Network another rare product that could be made into a flagship title. The production history of the show. Although the show might have seemed like it came out of nowhere this year, it has been in production for quite some time now. In fact, it was back in May of 2018 that Sci-Fi first announced that a television adaptation of Resident Alien comics would be given a pilot order under the guidance of Chris Sheridan. This caused fans of the franchise to go crazy, considering how Chris was already well known as being one of the lead writers for Family Guy. In September of the same month, Alan Tudyk was cast as the Resident Alien himself, which caused even more of a stir in the Dark Horse community. Alan was, after all, the best choice for the role for an awkward alien who wants nothing more than to fit into a small Colorado town. By February of last year, the rest of the cast had been selected, with filming starting shortly thereafter. Production was, however, placed on hold for a short while due to the effects of the global health situation. When sets around the globe started back up again, new safety concerns and procedures resulted in a slew of delays, but luckily for fans who had been waiting for ages for Resident Alien to be released, not many delays were suffered by the show. This resulted in the release of the series on the Sci-Fi Network in January of this year. And you'll be surprised to hear that even now that the global health situation continues to ravage the world, the network has indeed decided to renew Resident Alien for a second season, with the decision being made on 17th of March 2021. Now that you know a little bit about the history of the show, let's take a look at some of the behind-the-scenes secrets that made it so successful. Number 1, the setting of the show. Since the town of Patience in Colorado is a fictional creation of Dark Horse Comics, it won't surprise you to hear that the showrunner battled to find a filming venue that fit what was required of the small town. It's difficult to find the physical manifestation of something that has been created in the mind of someone else, after all. But what the production team eventually decided on was to move the filming location to British Columbia and Vancouver, where the weather would always reflect what was envisioned in the comic. While the vast majority of inside scenes were shot in and around Vancouver, studio shooting was done mostly at Sim Durwood Studio on the outskirts of the region. Most of the outside shots were taken from a small town by the name of Ladysmith, which is located on Vancouver Island. It's on this island that the showrunner created some important places that can no longer be separated from the television show. In fact, the clinic, town hall, and even the 59 bar were all recreated here with great precision. In other words, these sets were mostly physical in nature. There was, however, one piece of the setting which couldn't be recreated physically. We are, of course, talking about the mountainous zone which lies just outside the small town of Patience. To make up for the lack of mountain range where one was supposed to be, the visual effects team was brought on to render their own version of snow-capped mountains, which fit in it seamlessly as the backdrop of the town. This is why you only ever see these mountain peaks in the wide shots of Patience, rather than the close-ups where focus is deservedly placed on the various cast members. 2. The dead bodies on set. As fans of the show are all well aware, the context of Resident Alien calls for our leading character to investigate a number of murders in the small town of Patience. And since he has an addiction to reruns of Law and Order and has morphed himself into a doctor with expertise in killing of all sorts, it is up to him to discover who is littering their bodies throughout the town. It goes without saying that this concept called for a number of dead bodies, and since it isn't advisable to work with the dead, the showrunner needed to find a way to pass someone off as dead instead. Rather than dressing a dummy and making it appear to be real through the use of virtual effects, Sheridan asked the makeup department and set designers to help one another out. In practical terms, an extra was taken and made to appear dead. Makeup was used to soften the skin tone of the body, making it appear as if the blood inside was no longer warm to the touch. The extra in question was also asked to stay incredibly still, as zombies aren't a thing in the small town of Patience. The manner of death was also given some thought and exercised through the use of practical effects. If we think back to the death of Sam Hodges, for example, the prop department had to find a way to make the scalpel stick out from his neck, which was done with a combination of steady makeup and brilliant camera angles. Finally, the blood that can be found on these bodies when required was a mixture of corn syrup and sugar, which meant that cast members were able to swallow as much of the liquid as possible without encountering any health concerns. Although the eating of fake blood is never advisable regardless of how healthy it may be. Number 3. The introduction of the resident alien. The introduction sequence of the franchise is pretty important, as it sums up what the show is really about. Absolutely none of it was at all practical. Nobody has time to build a life-size alien spacecraft and wait for a stormy day after all. So to make sure that the perfect shot was brought to life, the showrunner made the production crew film a section of sky with the intention of bringing the virtual effects department on in post-production. These visual effects artists were given the task of rendering and incorporating a realistic-looking alien spacecraft into the scene, along with numerous strikes of lightning which damaged the ship beyond repair. To make the scene look as realistic as possible, the VFX department went ahead and obscured the view of the alien ship with the use of a fog effect. Clarity is often the worst friend of visual effects, unless you have the type of budget that Marvel Studio has, that is. So covering the ship with a thick mist and having the lighting obscure for the rest of the show, which is why it had to be done perfectly. Unfortunately for Alan Tudyk, however, virtual effects weren't enough when it came to the portrayal of his own character. Number 4. The making of the resident alien. As we said earlier, Alan Tudyk portrays the role of our resident alien in both his human and otherworldly form. When in human form, not much needs to be done, as Harry Vanderspeigle looks very similar to what we see when we look at Alan Tudyk. The only differences that need to be made to these scenes were his true reflection. For those of you who don't know what we're referring to, take a look at the scene where Harry looks out of the office window. Although he's disguised as human, his faint reflection staring back at him is actually that of his true form. To get this right, the visual effects department was brought on. Getting his alien reflection to stare back at him when not in alien form was as simple as superimposing his alien image onto the glass and softening its lines to make it appear more or less like a reflection. It's a pretty easy effect to pull off, but makes all the difference when it comes to telling the story about our resident alien and his attempt to find a place in our world. There were, however, also moments where the fake Harry's alien form had to be portrayed in all its glory, and since the majority of time this was taking place in clear circumstances, it wasn't possible for the production crew to use a virtual recreation of what the showrunner wanted Tudyk to look like when transformed. Remember, clarity is the enemy of virtual effects. This meant that a mask had to be made for Tudyk, which took around 2 hours to put on when the need arose. You see, it wasn't as simple as putting the mask on. This rubberized mask had to be glued to his face, and then blended in with the use of latex makeup. When the base is done, the eyes and teeth are added, with Tudyk's tongue being turned black shortly thereafter. Now that's a lot of effort. So what do you think of the behind the scenes secrets of Resident Alien? Feel free to let us know in the comment section down below.